What I kept focusing on is I want to get out of this room because in the ICU, there was no windows. Like an hour felt like 3 days and I couldn't really move. And so you're just in your own head there, right? And you're just like, I got to get out of this room. I got to do whatever it takes just to get out of here. And they told my wife at the time that I'd be in ICU for, they didn't know how long. And so every day I would just push myself to do something. Once they moved me to a regular room, then in some ways, sort of up to you, for me anyway, like how quickly you can get out of there. And that was my goal, get out of the hospital as fast as possible.
There are moments in life when the mission chooses you long before you realize you've chosen it. Now, today's guest is someone who never set out to work in healthcare, never imagined that he'd be shaping the future of military medicine, and certainly never expected that a personal crisis overseas would alter the course of his entire path of life. He was a Marine Corps radio operator stationed in Okinawa when everything changed. Illness, uncertainty, and the sudden realization of what it truly means when the system works or when it doesn't. That experience didn't just stay with him, but it shaped him. And years later, it would become the foundation of a mission he's still carrying to this day. Our guest today is Sergeant Major Ted Painter, Associate Vice President of Market Operations for CareSource Military and Veterans, a man whose professional role and personal purpose are now one and the same. For more than 22 years in the Marine Corps Reserve, Ted has lived the realities of military medical system, and as a leader, as a VA service-connected veteran, and as a TRICARE beneficiary himself, and now inside of CareSource, he's leading one of the most ambitious efforts we've ever seen, reshaping how service members, retirees, and their families experience healthcare. This isn't a theory for him, it's lived experience, it's urgency, it's the belief that military families deserve something better, something human, faster, something built for the way military life actually works. Before CareSource, Ted worked in 2 Fortune 500 companies, delivering massive regulatory and operational projects. Inside CareSource, he has led Medicaid implementations, built enterprise systems, and even founded the Military and Veteran Support Unit, all before taking on the role that brought him here today. But underneath the titles and all of his credentials, there's something more important there. It's a Marine who refuses to accept that's just the way it is. Now, in this conversation, you're going to hear the full story, the journey, the lessons, the discipline, the moments of doubt, the culture shock of transition, and the vision he now carries for care access in the Tampa and Atlanta regions and beyond. This episode isn't just about policy, it's about people. It's about what happens when someone who understands the system from both sides decides that it can be done a little bit better. So ladies and gentlemen, with that being said, let's welcome Sergeant Major Ted Painter. How are you doing, sir?
Great, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing good. I hope you liked the intro.
I don't know if we need to say anything else. I mean, I think that was it.
We hit it
That
all
was
today.
awesome.
Thanks for listening, everybody. Ted's a great guy, as you can see. But no, Ted, I like to, on the Hero Front podcast, we talk about what makes leaders humans. We talk about the times that were hard, right? Like military people face some crazy obstacles that are kind of like the civilians out there. They understand it, right? Because they might have dabbled in a few of these hard things too. But I think what makes the military member unique is we kind of have all of them collectively at once, right?
Right.
Like family separation, pay issues now, right? Today, you got your insurance, and that's always changing, government shutdown, deployments, budget cuts. I mean, heck, even my role was cut. I just retired. I worked for the DoD right away. I mean, that was the easy thing to do, right?
Sure.
So I became a suicide prevention specialist, was crushing it on base, connecting with the airmen, being their mentor. And guess what? Mr. Elon Musk came in, he deleted my job. But my point is, we have obstacles, lots of them. And Ted, that's why I'm thankful for you, because you know both sides of the coin. You know what it's like being a civilian. You know what it's like being a Marine, not just any Marine, a sergeant major. And now you're on this CareSource team who I've worked a lot with here recently. And I love you guys. You guys have so much heart, so much drive, and you really want to make a difference. That's the vibe I got. And so I'm really blessed to be on this team. But with that being said, I want to start with your story, right? I want to humanize you, Ted, and let the folks know that you're not just a role, you're not just a title, but you're
Right.
someone with lived experience. I know you were a Marine Corps radio operator.
Right.
I know in Okinawa, you might have had some sort of life-changing experience. And so I was hoping you could kind of take us back to Okinawa that kind of
Sure.
set you on the path that we're on now. And then I was hoping you could roll into your transition into civilian life as well.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah. My first active duty station was in Okinawa, Japan. I was on Camp Kenzer, and I was actually on a unaccompanied tour. So I had a wife and a young son at the time, and a daughter on the way. And I was stationed in Okinawa, and they were back in Ohio. So talked about the separation piece and all that, which was tough on its own. But yeah, I mean, about 9 months into my 12-month stint there, started having some weird symptoms and some health issues. And quickly over the course of a few days, one thing led to another, and I had to get medevaced from Okinawa to Balboa in San Diego. I was pretty ill. I had Guillain-Barre, if you've ever heard of that before.
I've
But I
never
was
heard
in,
of that. Could you tell us
yeah,
what that
it's
is?
yeah. So essentially, it's an immune deficiency disorder that basically your immune system starts attacking your nervous system, and it eats away the myelin, or that insulation around your nerves, and it does other things to you as well. But it got to the point where I was paralyzed. I was intubated because I couldn't breathe on my own.
Oh my
And
good. This is
yeah,
like way worse than I
it
was
was it
picturing.
was fast too. I mean, I woke up one day, and like one side of my face was essentially numb, right? And I was feeling odd, and I went to the chow hall for breakfast, and my sergeant saw me, and he's like, "What's wrong with your face?" And I didn't. I guess I didn't realize that like you could like physically see that there was like no movement there. And
It's almost like a stroke in a way, like the
yeah,
symptoms, right? That's probably
yeah,
initially what they thought when they saw
right,
the
right.
relaxation in your facial muscles.
Exactly, exactly. And he's like, "What are you doing here? You need to go to medical." And so I went to and back then nobody went to medical, right? I
That
mean,
had to have been pretty serious.
right, right. Because typically, if I would say, "Hey, Sergeant, I need to go to medical," he'd be like, "No, you don't." But he could tell there was something wrong, right? And so they thought it was Bell's palsy. And then the next day, I wake up, and it's in the other side of my face. And they're like, "Oh, you must have bilateral Bell's palsy," and all this stuff. And then the next day, it was like in my thighs and upper legs and everything, just like numbness, right? And so over the course of 3 days or so, I mean, it took over my whole body, like I said, and they had to intubate me, and because I couldn't breathe on my own, and it was happening really quick, and so they had to medevac me to San Diego, where I got treatment there. I was in ICU for 3 weeks, or about 10 days actually. Had to learn how to walk, and shave and eat and all those things again, and just took time. It was probably a year before I was 100% again. At the time, the Camp Pendleton commanding general and sergeant major was there at Balboa visiting other Marines, and they happened to see me and learn about my story a little bit. And I was, fighting the docs because they were wanting to medically separate me and all this stuff, and I was trying to fight that. And so when I was in rehab, actually, the commandant of the Marine Corps came and visited me because I found out that his son had previously had Guillain-Barre as well. And so it
Wow.
was it was very interesting. This was General Jones who came and saw me in San Diego, which was awesome that he did that. And he brought some of his family with him. But long story short, I was able to get back up and running, and within the time frame that I needed to get back and where I needed to be and run a PFT and get back in the fight. And it wasn't long after that I deployed to Iraq, and so it was sort of a whirlwind couple of years there, but yeah. So that experience, I mean, definitely, it obviously it puts things into perspective for you real quick. When one day you're young and healthy and you're a Marine and you're doing your thing, and then next thing you know, you're paralyzed. So pretty scary moment. And just the treatment that I got, and I was always talking to them, and thinking about, like, didn't have a clinical background or anything like that. And I was just like, man, I wonder, someday it'd be great to be able to get into healthcare and like help people the way these folks help people, right? Didn't know how that was going to quite get there, but yeah. So that was a pretty impactful moment. And then I served about 10 years active duty. As I was transitioning, unfortunately, I sort of hate telling the story because as a sergeant major, it's a funny story to tell. But I was a staff sergeant when I was getting out, and I basically had no plan. I was one of those guys that didn't really have a plan. And my wife and kids were already back in Ohio, and she said, "Hey, well, there's all these IT project manager jobs because a lot of the big financial firms were making a big push to hire 100,000 veterans at the time. This was like 2011, and never had even thought about working at a bank. Wasn't terribly interested in doing that, but was actually lucky enough to land a job with one of the big banks, and worked on a lot of process improvement type things. Then at some point, like you said, my role converted to working on big regulatory and controls type projects, and did that for a couple of years. It was great, working in that field, but it wasn't as fulfilling as when I was in the Marine Corps, and was doing good work and everything. And I saw an opportunity at CareSource that it came up, and I'd always wanted to get into healthcare and, evolve and get some different experiences, and thought it would be a great opportunity. And yeah, 10 years later, I'm still here. So, learned a lot in a short amount of time, as most do when you get into healthcare, but it's been pretty rewarding. And it's, like you said, I mean, to get to this point where we are now with CareSource Military and Veterans and the TRICARE work that we're doing, I mean, a lot of interesting things happened along the way. Sort of just pieces just fell into place along the way. Some of it's a little hard to explain how it happened, but it's been pretty great. Yeah.
Thanks for kind of taking all that time and putting it into like a couple paragraphs, but it's not easy to do.
Right.
But just to unpack a few of those things, for one, I was also in Okinawa. I was there in 2007 and 2008. And I have to say, the Marines, that's when I really saw you guys shine. I mean,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You're a very memorable group of folks.
Yeah. Well, and I wish, and I could probably gather what you mean by that. No, and I think I try to tell folks all the time, like, and I know it's not possible, but I feel like every Marine, their first duty station should be Okinawa. It's all Marine Corps. It's very family oriented because, you're in another country, and it's a different version of the Marine Corps, very disciplined, and
I loved it. I loved Okinawa. I loved Coco's, the
oh yeah,
curry. I love yakitori, the street, chicken on a stick. I
yeah,
loved Gate 2 Street and partying there. That's where I
yeah,
met the Marines. And my first interaction with them, I'll never forget this. I'm at Gate 2 Street. We're at, of course, we're doing karaoke, which is kind of culture shock already, because in America, we don't do
oh yeah,
that. So, like, I'm seeing these grown men just like
oh yeah,
belt these amazing songs out.
oh yeah,
So I'm like, okay, we're singing karaoke. Okay. I didn't
yeah,
realize the whole bar was Marines. Okay.
uh-huh,
And I had a buddy with me who's a boxer. He thinks he's tough. You know the type. You see where this is going.
uh-huh, yeah,
Well, of course, he's ready to start stuff, right? I mean, that's just kind of his personality. You got alcohol, late night.
right,
Thinks he's starting stuff with one person.
right,
And in a matter
yeah,
of 60 seconds, that turned into like 10 dudes versus one.
right.
And he got humbled that day. He got And that's when I realized there's more than one Marine. There's more than two. There's usually an entire group that
Oh
you don't
yeah,
even realize they know each other. And
oh
so
yeah.
there's never just one. But yeah,
And
those
sometimes they don't know each other, but they know they're Marines though, right? And
yeah.
so they're ready to jump in regardless. Yeah.
But I love the Marines. They're such great friends. They always have an absolute amazing fun time. They work hard, play hard.
Oh yeah.
So I made some great Marine friends out there. That's when I really got to like spend time with them as an airman. So really cool. And then also, Ted, what we have in common is I had an autoimmune issue too pop up in Okinawa, which was hypothyroidism, which is my thyroid slower, so my metabolism slower, and I have to
Yeah.
take a pill every day to help balance that. So I also have an immune, disorder, but I
Right.
also was on my deathbed like you were. Not quite as bad as yours, but I
Right.
had the flu mist. If you remember, there was a time when we were doing
Yeah.
all these different vaccines, right? We had the flu shot, which is still
Yeah.
used to this day. But at one point, they switched to a live virus version, which was when you snorted, called the flu mist. And the military
Remember
adopted
that.
this
Yeah.
for a year or two.
Right.
If you remember, guys would try to hold it in there and then blow it out when they left the building,
Right.
right?
Right.
At any rate, that live virus like connected something that was hiding
Oh
in my
man.
system, right? Like this other virus was dormant. And when I got that live virus, it gave me myocarditis, which is a heart virus. And they said, hey,
Yeah.
you might want to call family out. Like your heart is about to explode. And I could feel it. It felt like a heart attack. Like I couldn't walk.
Right.
Like I was always out
Oh
of
my
breath. I
gosh.
was always in pain. And I was like 23.
Right.
So not really, again, I was like you. I didn't want to go to the doctor, but I collapsed on the stairs and they were like, they let me go to the doctor then. I still drove myself.
Right. Right. Of course. Of course you did. Right.
Looking back, I'm like, guys, I was collapsed on the stairs and you let me drive.
Right.
Military can be
Right.
hardcore, man.
Right.
But I did make it, and they did an EKG. They sent me to Kansas City, and my dad flew out. It was a really scary time. And like you, Ted, I wanted to get in the medical field, and I was a maintainer then. I did make that leap. I became a medic in the Air Force. That's how I ended my career. And so we have a lot in common, man.
Yeah.
And my question to you, I say all that just to kind of take me back to that moment when you're in the hospital. Were
Hmm.
you at a moment of like giving up on yourself, or did you always have a fight in you? Were you ever worried you were going to lose your life? Like, what was going through your head?
Yeah. I mean, well, and parts of it in the beginning, I didn't remember. I was so heavily like medicated when they medevaced me. When I came to, I mean, I think for me personally, it was what I kept focusing on is I want to get out of this room, because in the ICU, there was no windows. Like an hour felt like 3 days, you know, and I couldn't really move. And so you're just in your own head there, right? And you're just like, I got to get out of this room. I got to do whatever it takes, just to get out of here. And they told my wife at the time that I'd be in ICU for, they didn't know how long I'd be in intensive care, right? And so every day I would just sort of push myself to do something, right? Like to be able to move, or once they moved me to a regular room, then in some ways, it's sort of up to you on how quickly you want to, in my mind, for me anyway, like how quickly you can get out of there. And that was my goal, get out of the hospital as fast as possible. I didn't want to be in there.
And
I
I
wanted
get
to,
that
yeah,
sense of claustrophobia you're kind of touching on, right? Like
in a little bit.
you're in
Yeah.
a hurry to leave. You want answers,
Right.
but they're not in a hurry. When you're in that setting, they're taking their
Nope.
sweet time. They're going
Of
room
course.
by
Yeah.
room,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Like
Oh, yeah.
you get this feeling like you're the only one that wants to leave and everyone else is okay with you just staying for a long time.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I think based on their experience, they saw something like this took a much longer time to recover. And they moved me to a regular room. And I mean, every day I would be doing something else, and the doctor would come in and be like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm shaving," and they would have to put like, these ergonomic things like on the handle of the razor or the toothbrush or whatever. And every day I would make sure I'm shaving, I'm brushing my teeth. So I would just take little steps every day, try to get up out of the bed, even if I couldn't even really walk. So I'd have to get help and all that stuff. And I mean, I got, released from the hospital to go to outpatient physical therapy within 3 weeks. They thought I'd be in ICU for 2, 3 months.
Wow.
And so just in my mind, I think it's one of those things like when there's just so much out of your control, right? My mindset was just focus on getting out of this room. And then when they moved me to a regular room, and I'm like, okay, I got to get out of this room, right? Then they sent me to outpatient physical therapy. And I was supposed to be there for the foreseeable future as well. The first day I walked around the inside of the building with a walker, and the next day I was like, no, give me a 4-point cane. So I'd use a 4-point cane, and then I'd use only one part of the cane, and so like 4 or 5 days in, I'm walking on my own. You know,
It's almost like I've noticed this a lot when Marines get hospitalized, and you often do because you guys
right.
are put in dangerous situations more often than other branches. Like there's a lot of Purple Heart recipients in the Marines. And in the Air Force, they're like celebrities almost because it's so incredibly rare
Dude.
to see
Right.
that like it would drive a conversation with a Marine. I feel like it's a little more like normal in your culture. But one thing I admire about when I hear about Marines in the hospital, you always get out. Like you have this fight in you that training instilled in each and every one of you, where no matter what situation you're in, no matter what the odds are like, you never give up. That's just something I picked up on, like hearing your
Yeah.
stories. You all
Yeah.
have
I
that
mean,
in common.
100%. I mean, I think that's so true. And I think you learn how to compartmentalize what you're in the middle of, right? I mean, even in like boot camp, you focus on the little things like getting from chow to chow, like you're not counting 13 weeks of boot camp, right? You're taking it in chunks, right? And so And that's really what I was doing. I was just like, I got to get out of here. Cause I mean, nobody likes being in the hospital anyway. Right. And I mean, I even, and they got me orders for a time while I was still recovering. I worked on the recruit depot in San Diego for headquarters company there. And they, moved my family out and everything. And, I hadn't seen my kids in a while and I wanted to see them. And I checked myself out of the physical rehab center. And they're like, well, you can't leave. And I'm like, well, I'm leaving. Have a great day. And I went home. And then, a few weeks later, I lost a ton of weight in there. I mean, I was down to like 135 pounds. I mean, it was still hard to walk, pretty consistently, but, within a few weeks, I was working, at least, not doing a lot of physical stuff, but it was more, administrative, but I needed something to do to get me back in the fight to some degree. Right. So, yeah, I mean, it was interesting, but and I think my biggest fear that sort of drove all that too, like I said, I think they were really seriously talking about medically separating me. And I had only been in the Marine Corps at that time, maybe 2 years, right? 2.5 years.
Yeah, and you
And I
worked
just,
so hard to get to that point. Like
yeah,
when you've been in 20 years, like we've been in a long time now, we kind
right.
of forget that
Oh,
just
yeah,
getting in the service is an
right.
uphill battle from day one.
Oh, yeah,
So you've been in 2 years, you're kind of at like the peak of like the excitement of being a Marine, right? Like you
right,
got through these really hard things. You're just
right,
starting, you're learning your job, you love what you do, you're in other countries, you're crushing it. And then
right,
suddenly everything you worked for with the blink of an eye is like, oh, well, we might just separate you. And you're like,
right.
wait, pause. What's going on?
Exactly. 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 And I was fighting it, tooth and nail. And I said, well, if I can progress and make progress and, get out of the ICU and all that stuff, like, when you're young and you're only in a couple of years, like you think what you're saying to them is making a difference. It probably wasn't. And they were just nodding their head like, oh, okay, yeah. But they weren't thinking I was going to do any of those things based on the illness, right? Which, by the way, I mean, you tied it back to the flu shot. Mine was similarly triggered by that as well.
What?
Yeah, because I have a waiver now. I don't get the flu shot every year because what I had is also linked to immunizations like the flu shot,
Yeah, I
which is
have a I
crazy.
have a waiver that I don't get live viruses. So
Right,
because they don't know if that's
right,
going to happen again, right? Like, is my body going
of
to attack
course,
itself again? And it's just
right,
not worth the risk. It's because we have
right,
herd immunity.
exactly,
So yeah,
exactly.
we have a lot in common, man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and those are the things you don't want to have in common with people, but for sure.
Well, we also have in common that we both got out that hospital and we both continued serving, right? And we both didn't give up. And so I think there's a powerful lesson in there as well. For me, it was my dad visiting. That's what got me out because I was mentally in such a bad place when that happened to
Sure,
me. I
sure.
think my mental depression and I was kind of giving up lowered my immune system. I think it literally, that depression got me sick. Like I don't completely blame the flu mist,
Right,
right?
right,
I'm a 23-year-old. That should have no problem on my body. It shouldn't almost kill me. So I think
sure.
that mental state I was in drove me down and I was giving up. And then when my dad flew out and he showed up, that gave me that life that I needed, that
Right.
boost,
A reminder. Yeah.
yeah,
That
that I
people love
can get
you
through it.
and
Yep.
yeah, exactly.
So that's how I personally got through that
Interesting.
time.
Yeah.
So, we've already covered a lot, Ted, about your past, being a Marine Corps radio operator, your illness in Okinawa, and your transition, and which is so many. Like, you don't know what to expect, and
Right.
your path was not straight, but you ended up landing with this team, this CareSource team, for 10
Yeah.
years, which is quite the commitment. It's a not for profit, no shareholders. You reinvest back in the people. The team is military affiliated. You saw firsthand how this team changes life. So I'm just curious, with the CareSource team, what was the moment that you realized like that was your family, like that was your team? Because you've been there 10 years, man. That's a long time.
Yeah. I mean, I think the culture for me right away sort of hooked me, right? Because they were everybody was very focused on our members, our beneficiaries, right? And every decision, every conversation we had, unlike previous civilian employment, was about the beneficiary and what is right for them, right? Because you can make a bunch of business decisions for a bunch of different reasons, and typically most companies it's all about the bottom line, right? But that doesn't mean it's always right for the people that you're serving. And so I really loved right away soon as I stepped in the door, like how from, people, cleaning the restrooms to the CEO and folks I worked with and stuff like that. I mean, that's what everybody's focus was. And it's pretty awesome. And, was still a TRICARE beneficiary at the time when I joined them. And so I was in the reserves and I still am. And then, I have VA benefits and I saw what we were doing every day to sort of go above and beyond and really, really like not just provide healthcare to people, but really help them, when they had issues or they, needed help with a job or transportation or interview preparation. I mean, just all sorts of things that we do. And I just thought to myself pretty early, I said, man, it'd be amazing if we could just take a percentage of like what we do for folks every day and find a way to apply that to TRICARE or the VA. And again, wasn't quite sure like what that path would look like. At the time, there was no path for that, right? But really, really wanted to explore that. And over time, I mean, opportunities, came into the company and different leaders I worked for. And like we started an employee resource group for veterans and families of veterans and stuff like that, and the military and veteran support unit. And, we started working on, pilot projects with VA. And then, as early as 2019, started communicating with the Defense Health Agency about TRICARE opportunities. And, just over time, it sort of all fell into place. And we were able to establish CareSource Military and Veterans as a subsidiary to CareSource and leverage what CareSource has been doing for 35 years to look for ways to take that and encapsulate that and inject that into the TRICARE space, which we're doing now. And even now, the team that we have at CareSource Military and Veterans, what I really love about the team is that it's all made up of people who are currently still serving like myself, or veterans or retirees or spouses of veterans, caregivers, folks that are all military affiliated in some way. And so we continue to like sort of drive down that path to say, okay, like, we're always focused on who we're looking to serve. And it makes it, a great place to work when that's what your focus is, instead of the bottom dollar. So,
Yeah, it kind of like, not having the bottom dollar drive every decision is tremendous for the customer. It kind of reminds me of like when Tom Brady is like, hey, I'll take a pay cut to bring on these better teammates, right? Like it just really shows that like you are truly in it for the veterans, for the military members and their families, which is like tremendous to me. And I love you guys too. And the first person on your team that I met was Selena Martin.
right.
And I just joined Recurrent Military. I'm in Atlanta. I'm at dinner. I'm meeting all these new people, right? I'm for the first time ever, I'm with Cortez and Kathy from the MIC. I'm with them. Selena sits down next to me. Again, no idea who she is, right? I don't know because I'm used to people in uniform, right? I see ranks, I see names. Now I'm in this weird space where like I have to guess who's who.
Right.
And so Selena sits down next to me and I was just blown away by her compassion, her purpose. We really hit it off because I told you I had some mental health struggles. I've since, became this Air Force podcaster and I've basically taken my trauma and turned it into a way to connect with people and to show people that, life is worth living. And that seemed to be near and dear to her heart too. Suicide prevention, mental health awareness, that's important to her as well. And so when she heard my story and what I went through and what I've created since then, like we couldn't have hit it off any better. And then when I finally found out who she was, and how high up she is basically in this company, I was blown away because she's so humble. She's so down to earth, so easy to talk to. You'd have no idea that she's like way up there in this company. Right. So I kind of learned an important lesson that day as a civilian, which is treat everyone like the CEO, because you really don't know like who you're talking to. But I say all that just to say that, Ted, meeting you, meeting the rest of the team, meeting Holly, I was just blown away by like how down to earth you were and how embedded in the military community you really were. Like you're kind of a customer and you work for that team. Like you have both, right? Like it can actually apply to you as well. So you want it to succeed too for you and your family. So it makes sense that the team is comprised of people who have this veteran tie. But for people who are like, okay, I've been hearing about CareSource a lot. I've been hearing about the demo. For people who have been hearing about it and they're curious, they're on the fence, they're not quite sure what it is. Could you
Sure.
break it down for us so that anyone listening could benefit from this program if they're eligible?
Sure. So it's called the TRICARE Prime demo, and it's the same TRICARE Prime benefits that some folks are eligible for. It just provides them a new choice in who helps coordinate their care. So today, if you're living in the East, your only option is TRICARE East, which is managed by Humana. And in the West, it's Tri-West. And so it's for eligible families in the Tampa, Atlanta, greater regions, and it gives them a choice in who coordinates their care. So if they're eligible for TRICARE Prime or TRICARE Select and they live in those areas, they're potentially eligible for this. It's a Defense Health Agency initiative. It was actually born of concepts written in the NDAA of 2017. So, it's taken a lot of years to get here to where we are, and it's not replacing TRICARE Prime. It's not a privatization effort. It is really to insert competition into the TRICARE Prime space with overlapping provider networks and to help drive innovation and change. And, the lessons learned from this is going to be taken and applied to the broader TRICARE contract and how it's managed. The benefits stay the same, no additional costs to participate in it. Their coverage doesn't change, so they don't lose anything. It's really the difference in how we are going to help you and folks manage their care. So getting care, navigating prior authorizations and communication and support, care coordination. The interesting thing for us is that typically TRICARE Prime has referrals that folks have to get to see a specialist. Well, in our version of TRICARE Prime, you won't have to get a referral to see a specialist. So if that specialist is in network, you need to go to the dermatologist, then go to the dermatologist. You're going to be covered because it's a covered service. We're not going to be a gatekeeper keeping you from getting care. So that's going to be a big deal for folks who won't, they're not used to that. And then for anybody who pays a monthly enrollment fee, this is mostly retirees and their families and survivors, they pay a monthly enrollment fee. That's going to be waived for the first 12 months of their enrollment with us. So it's TRICARE Prime. So it's the same benefits, same costs, but a little bit easier to access, and you get additional support that you may not get today.
Yeah, it's almost like an evolved form, right? It's like
Right.
there's you even mentioned back in 2017, it was kind of identified. Like we identify shortfalls, we identify where things could get better, but this is such a slow roll sometimes. It's hard to like see it to the end. It's like we know what the problems are, we know what we need to do, but can we make this happen? Can we make changes? And so I'm very impressed that y'all have gotten this far with this like grassroots initiative. And I want the world to hear about it because it makes so much more sense than the current layout. And I feel like if everyone did know about it, it would be a no-brainer and it would be at every city. It's only in 2 right now, Tampa and Atlanta. Is there a reason it's only in 2? And can we expect it to grow?
Yeah, I think that so DHA had originally 23 potential regions that they wanted to do this. They ended up landing on Tampa and Atlanta. It's 2 of the bigger markets that they were looking at. And I think that, it's one of those things that this is going to be testing some different models and some different ways to do TRICARE. And I think so they focused on those 2 areas. There's about 150,000 eligible folks between the 2 locations, which is a pretty good test bed for them. And so they want, I think, started in a couple areas and then they're going to grow it over time. So there's supposed to be at least 3 more locations that are going to get announced sometime next year. We don't know where those are going to be just yet. And they may change, right? Instead of a city, they may focus on a more rural area because access to care is difficult in rural areas. So yeah, we're looking forward to those new locations coming out, and there could be more over the next few years as well.
Yeah. And I just want to pitch a situation to you and let me know if I had the CareSource version of TRICARE, if this would look any different.
Okay.
But one thing I constantly run into, I have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old. Kids get sick all the time. I'm at one of the biggest hospitals. I'm right near Eglin Air Force Base. I think it's the biggest stateside Air Force hospital there is. I mean, it's absolutely massive. They do surgeries, all sorts of stuff.
Sure.
Even with that much staff, with that many people, I don't think my kids really are ever seen there because they don't have the space or the room for it. And so here's an example. My son, he had super bad respiratory issues, trying to get him seen. We get an appointment, it's a month away. I'm like, okay, a few days go by. Now he's missing school. I call them. I'm like, hey, I can't wait 30 days. My kid is really sick. What do I do? I'll go to the ER. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's my option, to go to the ER in Fort Walton Beach, Florida in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Not a place I want to be with my kids.
Sure. Sure.
But that's what happened. And I had to take him, I think in 1 week, I took him to the ER 3 times, and he was never actually seen on base. The appointment never worked out. Now, if I was in Atlanta or Tampa and I chose CareSource to pair nicely with my TRICARE, would that situation look different? Because this is a situation many families deal with.
Yeah, totally. And I think if you look across the landscape of, the different hospitals on base, they're called MTFs, typically. And there's other types as well. But yeah, I mean, it's a challenge to have the appropriate staff there. And I think for us, what's different is you wouldn't go to that base hospital. So if your primary care manager is at the base hospital, we would help transition you to a primary care manager in our network. So a civilian primary care manager, and all your care would be seen off base. So these on base facilities are not in our network. They're not part of the TRICARE Prime demo. It's really to steer folks towards increased access in the community. And so that's where our network is built. Now, you can still go to that hospital in case of an emergency, and we'll still pay for that. But it would be a little bit different because you wouldn't be going there. You would be going to our community network. And I think from a wait time perspective, and there's rules around, drive time standards, wait times, all those things that are very aggressive from a government perspective. But the way we do it is even more stringent than the government does it. So your wait time you shouldn't have to wait a month or two away for him to be seen for a respiratory issue and things like that. So there's going to be, I think, an increase in access for folks who select us. Referrals won't be a blocker. So if you've got to see a specialist, you can just go, right? And so you can go to any provider in our network that has access and get you in. And we've got some folks at CareSource too, that from a case management or care coordinator perspective, like the more complex your needs are, the more involved we're going to be in helping you navigate all that, so you don't have to do it on your own. So you shouldn't have to wait that long. I mean, our goal is that at the end of the day, going to the emergency room is the last resort, right? And so we do whatever we can to make sure that doesn't happen. And so we'll have folks that are actually going to jump in and help and assist you, get the care that you need when and where you need it. So that shouldn't happen.
And it seems like with CareSource, there's more of like a staff ready to help, versus like,
right.
My supervisor basically saying, because this actually happened to me when I became a retiree. I wasn't insured right away. Like I missed a step and I was not covered, and it was confusing. My supervisor's like, here's the website. Like, that's all I got. Like, just click around on there, like mess around, see what you can figure out. It took a few days. I got it ironed out. Obviously, really stressful. I had 20 different phone numbers, right? Like I keep getting transferred to west and then to east, and it was a mess. Is there more like help with the CareSource team, like especially for like our EFMP families or people who have like really layered, complicated medical needs? Like, can I call someone and actually talk to a human?
Oh yeah. So when you call our beneficiary services line, you're going to get humans. They're going to answer your call. I mean, right now we're taking calls every day, and we're answering within like 6 seconds on average. And you're going to have a lot of folks that are there ready to support you, not just from a customer service perspective, but we've got our 24/7 nurse advice line. We've got numbers to our care management team, and all of that is integrated. So if a customer service person talks to you, or somebody on the care management team or the nurse advice line, all that information gets collected, loaded into our system. They can all see it at the same time. And you're going to have somebody assigned to you from a customer service perspective. So you should get the same person you call. When you call from a care management perspective, you'll have a case manager assigned. So they'll be focused on you and your family to make sure you're getting, all your needs met when and where you need it. So we've got several different teams, several different layers of folks that are standing by ready to help. And, you're not going to get recordings and offshore folks and, things like that. So you're going to get folks on the ground working at CareSource that are, ready to help on a daily basis. So
that's amazing. Have you guys had any feedback so far? Have you any testimonies? Anyone kind of like a pulse check on how this is actually playing out and what people feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the TRICARE Prime demo specifically, I mean, I think with anything like this that's new, I mean, you know how, military folks are, we're all a little bit apprehensive to change, right? When you talk to a retiree or an active duty service member, 9 times out of 10, it's really their spouse that's making these decisions, right? Like, I'm building a TRICARE plan right now, but if I weren't, I mean, my wife is still in charge of our healthcare. You know what I mean? And so it's been a really great experience just educating and talking to folks and letting them know, hey, you've got a choice this year that typically you would never have. And, whether they select us or not, at the very least, they've got an option this year. And, the feedback's been positive. I mean, I think a lot of people are either apprehensive to change at first or they've been looking for change for a long time. But at the end of the day, we've talked to those folks. We've been able to get them to an enrollment specialist, get them enrolled. It's a pretty quick process, pretty smooth. And yeah, I mean, it's been positive. I mean, even with providers that we contract with, that's all been very positive as well because they're looking for something different from a TRICARE perspective as well. So it's all been positive, but it's all about awareness, and people a lot of times don't know or they're not paying attention or they forget it's open season. And so we're just trying to get the word out there. So at the end of the day, whether they select us or not, I'm just focused on educating folks so that they at least know that they've got an option this year.
Yeah. And, I got to join the team on a few of those adventures. I call them side quests. And I got to go on a side quest to Atlanta, to the Blueprint. I got to see basically Selena, who we spoke about earlier, and a lot of the recurrent military team basically get all the community leaders in Atlanta together in one room to talk about CareSource and the amazing things it's doing. So I got to meet incredible people who I got to also interview. And those episodes will be releasing this month as we enter open season. And then we also got to go to a veteran fest, right? Where it's like all these booths, a lot of them are healthcare, some are banks, really just helping the veteran community in that area. I thought it was an amazing concept. And we had our own little section there too. And what surprised me was the majority of the people that I personally saw that day were providers. They were providers wanting to thank the team for doing such a amazing job with this CareSource initiative. And they also had they wanted to get their peers in the network. All these providers were just lined up to be in this network. Why was that such a big deal for the providers?
Yeah, I think it's a big deal for them because, at the end of the day, they've got a lot on their plate too. I mean, administratively, if you think about a provider's day to day, they're contracted with a bunch of different health plans for a bunch of different products like Medicaid, Medicare, commercial, TRICARE, right? And so they've got a lot of administrative burden. And what CareSource does is over the years, we've learned for the ways to remove some of that administrative burden from their workload. It's been very positive from that. We pay claims on time and accurately. And we've just got and especially in Atlanta, because we've been there for some time. I mean, we've got a lot of good rapport with all the providers there because that's what we do. We try to be as efficient as possible, pay them on time, pay them accurately, remove administrative burden, don't make them do a checklist to do a checklist type of thing, right? And so that's gotten us a lot of positive feedback from that. And I think, sometimes, even the providers they're ready for a change in this space. And I think they see what we're trying to do from a managed care perspective and make TRICARE better for everyone on the long term. So yeah, I mean, it's been interesting. Very early on, we've got a lot of positive feedback from providers. And some of them have been our biggest champions along the way, which has been amazing.
Yeah, I saw it firsthand, and that I did not expect that. But when I did, it put a
Right.
smile on my face because of
Yeah,
just
it was pretty cool.
of how excited they were to talk to the team directly. I was like, wow, this is a huge. It's not just big for the veterans. It's also important for our medical providers. This helps their patient load. This helps their process, right? Because they're worked I'm from the hospital. I can tell you right now, they stay in there till 7, 8, 9 at night, sometimes just doing notes, for patients they saw in the morning. So if we can streamline, some of these processes, it actually helps the patient. If we help the provider, it helps the patient. It creates a lot less wait times, gives them a better attention to detail, a more personalized care for that individual. The one thing I've seen in the military, you've probably seen it too. Every time I go to the hospital on base, I feel like I got a different PCM every time.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm on the 20th PCM in a year.
Right.
So I think the
Right.
continuity of care
Right.
is tremendous, because how are
Yeah,
you going to
exactly.
catch something wrong with you if I'm talking to someone different every time? You're not. You're going to
Yeah,
miss
and nobody likes answering the same questions every single time they go, right?
it.
Because that's what you're going to get too. I mean, when that happens, right? And I think they're all dry. I mean, I think those are all good people at the MTF, and they're all doing the best that they can with what they've got, right? But they're going to ask you the same basic foundational questions that you've already answered 100 times, right? And
Right.
that gets frustrating for everybody. So yeah, I think the continuity of care, being able to maintain a consistent, primary care manager, I think is a big deal for folks.
Absolutely. So here's what we hit on so far, Ted. We hit on that there's no referrals required. We hit on that retirees pay no enrollment fees for 12 months, that there's a 90-day continuity. So we can still see your doctor while CareSource contracts them. We have the same Prime benefits. It's just delivered faster. It's have a human touch to it. But I want to kind of, as we end, kind of go into our call to action here. Because at this point, if folks are listening in, they want to know how they can get involved with CareSource. Maybe they're in Tampa, maybe they're in Atlanta. Is there a phone number? Is there a website? Is there an open season? I was hoping we could kind of end with this call to action so anyone listening could jump on this amazing initiative.
Yeah, I mean, I think the key here is that most folks, if you're living in the same place, your status hasn't really changed. It's sort of set it and forget it. So typically, they don't have to do anything during open season. It just rolls over into next year. They're covered, right?
Mhm.
So if folks are interested, they're going to have to take action to select us. And there's a few different ways to do it. So if folks are living in the Tampa and Atlanta area and you're eligible for TRICARE Prime, you can review your options. Again, same benefits, better support, fewer hurdles, faster access. Folks can go to caresourcemilitary.com. We've got a bunch of information there. We've got our contact information there. And at the end of the day, if you're just ready to enroll, like you've got your questions answered, you can call one of our enrollment representatives at 877-996-9333. And, again, folks have got to make a choice during this open season where they may not have to typically. So if TRICARE Prime Demo by CareSource Military and Veterans, fits their family, we'd be honored to serve them, but they got to take action to make it happen. And we'd welcome them in, and I'm confident we're going to take great care of them.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Ted.
Sure.
I've been blown away by your team. I've been blown away by getting to know you, Ted, your story. You're a devil dog. You almost lost your life early on, just like I did, but we both
Yeah.
hung in there. We both fought tooth and nail. We both ended up joining the medical community to make things better for our veterans. And here we are today, kicking butt, being
Yeah.
there for our community,
Crushing it. Yeah.
crushing it, and filling in these gaps of these complaints that we've all know about. We all know about these things. We've all complained about them, even joked about it, right? But the change has arrived. It's called CareSource. It's here to fill in those gaps, to make our lives easier, to keep us healthy and happy. And as retirees, as veterans, I mean, don't we deserve that? We've been through all these years, X amount of years, putting on the uniform. I want all of us to ride off into the sunset with our family, happy and healthy for as long as we can. And to me, that's CareSource. You guys strike me as that company, that game changer that's going to fix a lot of the issues that have been pointed out for so many years. So Ted, thank you for sharing your story, your journey as a devil dog, your time at Okinawa, which is also close and near and dear to my heart. And then kind of talking about your team, your transition, and all the amazing benefits CareSource provides specifically right now during open season until I believe December 9th, November 10th through December 9th. So now is the time for anyone listening. Now is the time to take action. CareSourceMilitary.com. Make the change if it fits your family. Let's fill in those gaps. Let's change this medical landscape to make sense to the veterans of today. With that being said, Ted, any final thought?
Yeah, honestly, I'm just like you said. I mean, thanks for summarizing all that, because it's really impactful when you hear it, full end to end, like what it took to get here. And I just super honored to be a part of it. Really focused on, providing the best care that I can. Like to your point, just I want this to be great for folks. I want to take, a lot of lessons learned, and hopefully it gets applied to the broader TRICARE community. And again, just honored to be a part of it, and looking forward to serving these folks, because they're our brothers and sisters really, and just really excited about it and honored. So
thank you so much, Ted. And thank you to everyone who listened to the very end. This was the hero's journey of Ted Painter, and we're out.